A kid walks into a sneaker store and stops in awe. He stares at a pair of shoes that look like they belong in a sci-fi movie with glowing spikes, crazy textures, and vibrant colors. Who makes these? He wonders. Well, that's what we're about to find out. Today, we're pulling back the curtain and taking you into the factory where these monster-inspired kicks are made. But before we jump in, subscribe to this channel for more behind-the-scenes action. Ready to dive into the world of monster shoes? Well, come on then, let's go. It all starts with a vision, a wild idea that could make even the most creative minds raise an eyebrow. What makes monster shoes so irresistible is their boldness and their ability to defy convention. But how do they even come up with the idea for a monster shoe? You might think it's just a matter of slapping some fangs and fire on a regular pair of sneakers, right? Well, it's way more complicated than that. Designers actually start by drawing inspiration from a variety of sources, everything from mythology, cartoons, and creatures in pulp culture to create real-life animals. Once the concept is drawn, the designers work closely with a team of experts to ensure the shoe is not only visually striking, but also functional. I mean, you can't just walk around in a shoe that looks like a monster and falls apart after one step. I mean, yeah, they've got to think about comfort and durability too. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll get to that in a bit. So now we've got the design in place. What happens next? Well, that's where things get a little, dare I say, monstrous. Yeah. The process starts with creating a prototype. The team uses technology and 3D modeling to bring the design to life. The materials need to be just right. You can't make a monster shoe out of regular leather, can you? No. It's all about finding the right fabrics that can mimic scales, fur, or whatever else the designer has in mind. This is where things get really interesting. Every texture, every tiny detail is considered. But you'd think crazy materials like faux fur, rubber spikes, and 3D printed parts might make the shoes weak, right? Well, no, not exactly. In fact, these shoes are made using some seriously high-tech methods that ensure they're both durable and comfortable. For instance, instead of using traditional stitching, the factory employs bonding agents. Yeah, bonding agents that can hold up to the most extreme conditions. You want a shoe that will survive running, jumping, or even stomping or moshing? And the soles? Well, these shoes need grip, like a monster with claws, and trust me, they've got it. The soles are made from high-performance rubber designed to withstand everything. But here's where the magic happens. The shoes are sent through a series of automated machines that help assemble them with precise detail. Each component and detail is carefully placed by the machines with no room for error. Now, you might be thinking, wow, this is all pretty standard for a shoe factory, right? But here's where it gets crazy. Have you ever wondered who wears these shoes? Are there really people out there walking around in them, or is it all just for show? Well, these shoes have a secret following. Monster shoes aren't just for anyone. There's a whole underground community of people who live and breathe these bold designs. From extreme athletes to fashion rebels, these shoes are considered a badge of honor. And get this, some of the shoe factories even have waiting lists for these limited edition designs. So yeah, it's not all just factory work and mass production. There's a whole subculture dedicated to monster shoes where enthusiasts are willing to pay big bucks to own a pair. Now that we've seen the production process, let's talk about the finishing touches. After assembly, each pair of monster shoes undergoes a rigorous quality check. Nothing gets out of the factory unless it's perfect. The shoes are inspected for any flaws in the design, material, or functionality. If anything isn't up to par, it's sent back for rework. After all, these shoes need to maintain their reputation for being the boldest, most monstrous footwear out there. But before you think it's all smooth sailing, let's talk about packaging. These shoes aren't just thrown into a box and shipped off. Oh no, they get the full treatment. Each pair is carefully placed into custom-made boxes that reflect the shoe's wild design. And once you open that box, well, let's just say you're in for a little surprise. Some shoes even come with their own little accessories, like custom keychains or socks designed to match the monstrous look. So, what's the real cost of making these shoes? Well, you'd think these shoes would cost an arm and a leg because of all the high-tech materials and insane designs, right? Well, it's actually not as crazy as you might think. While the production process is intricate and the materials are top tier, the price tag isn't necessarily sky high. The reason? Well, the shoes are mass produced in limited quantities. That means that although they're technically limited edition, they're still made in bulk. You still get the unique design without that outrageous price. While the price might seem reasonable for the average buyer, if you're after one of those rare collector's edition pairs, be prepared to shell out a pretty penny. So next time you see a pair of monster shoes, remember, they didn't just happen by accident. They were carefully designed, crafted, and packaged with passion and precision. Now let's completely change direction and go for something that's not just for your soles, but for your taste bud. Yeah, it's about strawberry jams. Have you ever wondered how the jar of strawberry jam sitting on your kitchen shelf went from being fresh, juicy strawberries to that deliciously sweet, spreadable treat we can't get enough of? Well, let's see exactly how your favorite fruity spread is made. So whether you're a fan of classic PB&J sandwiches or just love a dollop of jam on your toast, get ready to learn all about the process. But before we dive in, make sure you like this video if you're all about that sweet fruity goodness. So the first step in making strawberry jam might seem like an obvious one. It all starts with fresh strawberries. Yeah. Who would have thought? But did you know there's a lot more to it than just picking them and tossing them in a pot? Yeah, strawberries are grown in fields by dedicated farmers who ensure that they're picked at just the right moment. We're talking ripe, plump, and full of flavor. But getting the perfect strawberries is only half the battle. Once they're harvested, they need to be transported quickly to the factory to preserve their freshness. But how do they ensure the strawberries stay fresh during transportation? Well, farmers pack the berries in refrigerated trucks to maintain the right temperature. This helps to prevent them from ripening too quickly or becoming overripe, which could affect the jam's flavor. The berries are then rushed to the factory where they'll be inspected for quality and prepared for the next steps. But just how much attention goes into selecting the strawberries? Well, let me tell you, the team at the factory is picky. Only the best, ripest berries make it to the jam. After all, we're talking about making the perfect spread, not just any old fruit paste. Come on now. Once the strawberries arrive at the factory, they go through a thorough cleaning process. The berries are rinsed with cold water to remove any dirt or debris. But it doesn't stop there. The strawberries are also carefully sorted to ensure that only the best ones go into the jam. If there are any damaged or overly ripe berries, as we said, they're set aside. This might sound like a lot of work, but trust me, every detail counts when you're trying to make a product that's as sweet and smooth as strawberry jam. Now that the strawberries are clean and sorted, it's time to break them down into smaller pieces. But this is where the magic happens. Instead of just chopping them up like you would for a fruit salad, the strawberries are pulped. This is done using large industrial machines that mash the berries into a smooth puree, making sure that the fruit's natural juices are released. The pulp is then sent to the next stage of the process where the real fun begins: cooking. So how do you go from strawberry pulp to jam? This is where things get interesting. The pulp is placed into large cooking kettles where it's combined with sugar, pectin, and sometimes a little lemon juice. The sugar is essential because it not only sweetens the jam, but also helps to preserve it, extending its shelf life. Pectin, on the other hand, is the key ingredient that gives the jam its jammy, gel-like consistency. Without pectin, you'd be left with a thin, runny syrup, not the thick, spreadable jam we all know and love. But here's where the temperature becomes really important. The mixture is cooked at a precise temperature for a specific amount of time. The goal is to reduce the liquid and thicken the jam while maintaining that perfect balance of sweetness and tartness. If the temperature's too high, the jam might burn. If it's too low, the jam won't set properly. It's all about getting that perfect simmer, and the factory workers keep a close eye on the process to make sure it's just right. Well, you might be wondering, how do they know when the jam is ready to go? After all, cooking can be a bit of an art, right? Well, they don't just guess. The factory uses a clever technique called the plate test to check the consistency of the jam. And here's how it works. So a small spoonful of jam is taken from the kettle and placed on a cold plate. Then it's tilted slightly to see how it moves. If the jam flows slowly and wrinkles when pushed with a finger, it's at the perfect consistency. If it's still, too runny, it goes back into the kettle for a bit more cooking. This is a critical step because no one wants runny jam on their toes, right? Once the jam has reached that perfect consistency, it's ready to be bottled. But before we get there, there's one more important thing to consider: flavor. Strawberry jam is all about that sweet, fruity taste, and while the factory aims to use the freshest strawberries, sometimes the berries can vary in sweetness depending on the season. So to ensure consistency, the factory might add a little extra sugar or lemon juice to adjust the flavor. After all, we don't want any surprises when you open up that jar. So now comes the fun part: bottling. The jam is transferred from the cooking kettles into large containers that are ready for packaging. But this isn't just a free-for-all. The jam is carefully poured into jars that have been pre-washed and sterilized to prevent any contamination. This is important because the jam has to be sealed tightly to preserve its freshness and ensure that it stays good on your shelf for months. Once the jars are filled, they're sealed with airtight lids. This step is crucial for keeping the jam from spoiling and maintaining its signature texture and flavor. But how do they ensure that every jar of jam is sealed perfectly? Well, the factory uses a sophisticated machine called a capping machine. This machine automatically places lids onto the jars and seals them tightly with just the right amount of pressure. It's so precise that it can seal thousands of jars in a matter of hours without any mistakes. But the factory also has quality control checks at this stage. A small sample of jars is taken from each batch to ensure the seals are sealed properly. No jar leaves the factory unless it's been double-checked for perfection. Once the jam is sealed, it's time to label and pack it. The labels are applied with the same level of care as the rest of the process. They make sure each jar has its brand name, ingredients, and best before date clearly marked. And jam jars are then packed into boxes, ready for distribution to stores, ready to make their way into your pantry. But before they hit the shelves, there's one last step, and that's pasteurization. Pasteurization is a heat treatment process that kills any remaining bacteria in the jam and ensures it's safe for consumption. The sealed jars are placed in a hot water bath where they're heated to a specific temperature for a set amount of time. And after pasteurization, the jam is allowed to cool down before it's, shipped out to stores, ready for you to grab the next time you need that perfect spread for your toast. And that's how strawberry jam is made. From the initial harvest of fresh strawberries to the final jar ready for your breakfast table, it's a process that takes careful planning, precise measurements, and a lot of attention to detail. But in the end, it's all worth it when you get to that, spread that delicious jam on your morning toast. Yeah, gotta love it. And there you have it, our fascinating dive into the creation of monster shoes and how strawberry jam is made. It may seem like a strange comparison, but both require thoughtful planning, advanced machinery, and skilled, dedicated teams in factories worldwide. These teams are behind the cutting-edge technologies that bring us these amazing products. What do you think about these insights from the world of production? Did your curiosity get a boost today? Maybe we quenched that curiosity thirst? Anyways, if so, don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing discoveries happening all around us. Share this with your friends and stay tuned for our next exploration.